Okay, here we go. Round 2 in the Karen Reed saga. This is her second trial. We're doing opening statements right now.
Thank you, Your Honor.
There's a new lead prosecutor for the state. Rule number 1 in opening statements, closing statements, never ever read. Don't bring any material to the podium. There is no reading when we're doing this.
At 6:04 a.m. on January 29, 2022, the alarm bell sounded in the Canton Fire Department. Firefighter paramedic Timothy Nuttall knew what that meant. His heart skipped a beat. He raced to his equipment and he picked up his bag, which was meticulous. And then there was a voice commanding that there was cardiac arrest. He took his bag, he had just gotten to the station, and he rushed to the ambulance. He was one of the most senior paramedics that morning. Another paramedic, Anthony Flamati, would be running this mission. He jumped in the back of the ambulance, the door shut, and they headed off.
Many of the stations were having issues with the video and the audio because a lot of times they're not mic'd up properly. He's walking away from the mic, so they're having a hard time getting the audio on.
Fairview Road. As they drove, firefighter Nuttall could not see anything other than the engine of the ambulance. As the car pulled up to 34 Fairview, the ambulance, he stood at the back door, the doors open, and he stepped out into bedlam. He could hear a woman screaming and shrieking, the cold, hard air slapping on his face, and the wind, blizzard conditions swirling around him. You will hear him tell you how he trudged towards those screams in the darkness to snow, and when he got there, he saw 3 women surrounding a man lying, not moving on the ground. He walked up to the man, and he reached down, and he tried to find any signs of life, pulse, anything, and he found nothing. And he got up and he walked over to that defendant, Karen Reed, and he told her that he thinks that man is gone. And then he heard the yell from Anthony Flamati, the chief, and he said, "Come back, let's go." Because you'll learn that in the cold, even if somebody's heart stops, even if they're presumed to have passed, sometimes you can still save a life. So you'll see on a dash cam video, you'll hear through testimony, he went back to that man who's John O'Keefe. He went back to him, and that crew, coordinated effort, they did everything they could to save his life. They got on their knees, they began CPR.
Generally, you want to keep your opening between 20 and 25 minutes. The human brain cannot concentrate longer than that, so most of the time it's not wise to go past that time limit. Let's see what happens.
And firefighter Nuttall will explain, as he kneeled over John O'Keefe, he looked up, and the defendant approached him, and you'll see it on the video. Now, he wanted any information, because when you're trying to save someone, you want to know, are they on drugs, medication, do they have a heart condition? And he looked up at Miss Reed and he said, "What happened?" And you'll hear her words through firefighter Nuttall. She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
We all know the context of that statement by now. She asked it in a question form. You're not going to be able to fool this jury because the defense is easily going to show that she was asking, "I hit him," as a question, not as a statement.
And it was at that time, with the words of the defendant, that she admitted what she had done that night, that she hit John O'Keefe. Now those words didn't mean anything to firefighter Nuttall. They weren't in context, they didn't reconcile with the injuries, it didn't help him in his treatment, so he ignored it. Now, firefighter Nuttall is not a police officer. He is not an investigator, he is not a detective. He's a first responder. And so he takes that information, it was useless to him, he continues to work on John O'Keefe trying to save his life. You'll see the team put him on a stretcher. And when they lift him from the ground, they bring him to the ambulance, and while they're bringing him to the ambulance, you'll see on the videos that other first responders speak to the defendant. One first responder, Mr. Flamati, she will say, "I hit him, oh my God, I hit him." And then she was interviewed or asked questions for background information, not a criminal investigation, just background to try to help John. And she was asked questions about his background, and during that conversation, you won't hear her see the defendant was a person by the name of Jen McCabe and a firefighter McLaughlin. And she tells Fire McLaughlin, the third first responder, "I hit him." They bring Mr. O'Keefe to the Good Samaritan Hospital. and his body is cold. The doctors work feverishly. They treat him, trying to save him. They try to warm his cord. And unfortunately, firefighter Nuttall's first instinct was accurate. John O'Keefe passed. So why are we here today? We are here today because John O'Keefe was killed by the actions and conduct.
Turtle Boy's in his usual spot watching. He's been a huge advocate for the release of Karen Read. He's been jailed several times already for his advocacy and his journalism. So we always salute Turtle Boy there, and he always gets the best seat in the house.
Of that defendant, Karen Read. You will learn through this case, through facts, science, and data, you will learn that on January 29th, 2022, when the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole, you will learn that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant and her SUV drove away. Home, a friend had taken him, when they bring the nephew home and he is distraught. And then Peggy hears a knock on the door. It is the defendant and her father. They want to come in. They come in, no condolences to Peggy. And they ask, can we go upstairs to John's room? And she's busy consoling her grandson. They go upstairs, they're upstairs for about 15 minutes. They come down, and quickly they leave. Now they got there from the defendant's father, drove his wife and the father to that house. But when they leave, they take 2 times. We learn that when police start getting some of the information, they learn about the broken tail light, they learn information that she had told people that she had hit him. They went down to see her, and on their way down, they decided they would get a warrant to take the Lexus. And you're going to hear from a very renowned doctor, a neurosurgeon, who has treated thousands and thousands of head injuries. And the wound on the back of the head fell backwards, not only cracked the skull, it's called a basal fracture, to create an injury called counter-coup.
This is something very new. They're claiming that John was killed by hitting the back of the head. Those of us in the fight community know that generally we're restricted from hitting people in the back of the head because it is so sensitive to potentially killing someone. I've never seen a situation where someone has actually hit the back of their head and died, but was able to move prior to this. They're going to have to come up with some theory that he hit the back of his head so severe that it killed him, but he was able to get up and somehow move to the other part of the lawn. That's going to be the issue.
So by a car and fell backwards and hit his head on that hard rock ground. Remember, there's no snow, it's just a dusting at this point. The back of his brain hits the back of his skull and bounces up. When it bounces up, it leaves marks showing that impact. And this neurosurgeon will tell you, he's treated thousands of patients, that this injury, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, is counter-coup caused by falling backwards and hitting your head. When the medical examiner for the state looked at it, they generally said blunt force trauma. They had it undetermined.
This is very similar to when people die from just one punch. It's not the punch that kills them, it's hitting the back of your head on the concrete. However, I've never seen anyone get up from a life-altering hit to the back of the head and then somehow move and then die.
So we brought it to a renowned neurosurgeon who does exactly this. You're also going to hear from an active reconstruction. His name is Doug Welcher. He does not work for the state police or local police. He was hired to take a look at this case and the data. He will come in and explain to you exactly what I talked about, how the data from that black box coincides with the cell phone and the movements of the car, the moments before, during, and after the defendant struck John O'Keefe with her car.
The issue when you're facing a retrial is the prosecution knows where their weaknesses are. Last trial had a dope on the stand trying to recreate the scene, but he simply wasn't qualified to do so. Now it appears that the prosecution is going to have someone that's actually better and understands the procedure.
Now, Just a few more things I want to share with you. There are 3 charges against the defendant in this case. The first one, second-degree murder. When most people hear murder, they instantly think shooting somebody, stabbing somebody, putting deliberate premeditation. Our Honor will instruct you on the law. I'm not going to trample in that area, but I can tell you clearly, we are not going to try to prove that Karen Reed tried to kill John O'Keefe. We're not going to try to prove to you that she intended or wanted him dead. That's not second-degree murder. What we will prove to you is she engaged in an intentional act, driving back at him at that speed, in the storm, in the darkness, knowing that he had just gotten out of her Lexus. She intended that act would cause a plain and strong likelihood of death. That's what will prove to you second-degree murder. Also, operating under the influence of alcohol, manslaughter will prove to you that she drove her Lexus recklessly. She hit John O'Keefe, and because she hit him and he fell back, she caused his death. The third charge is being seen after knowingly causing death. Again, she hit Mr. O'Keefe with a car. She knew he was injured. She left him behind and died. That's the whole group. This case will come down to the science and the data. The science and the data, the cell phone, it is the best of historians. It doesn't suffer from intoxication. It doesn't suffer from memory loss. It doesn't suffer from emotion, pride, or prejudice. It is facts. It is data. And that facts and data will lead you to the truth in this case. But after Ms. Reed was charged, she began what you'll learn is a campaign. A campaign to make public statements. 2020, Nightline, Fox 25, a documentary. And we've had an opportunity to get many of her statements in the footage, and we're going to show much of it to you. And her statements to you will confirm what you already know from the science and the data. What you will already conclude from the facts independent about what she did that night. Her words.
I love using visuals in openings and closings. I love using any type of multimedia videos if you got them. It's better to use that than anything else. I think they're going to do that here.
That your judgment is sound. And you're going to hear from her own lips in many of her statements. Her admissions to extraordinary intoxications. Her admissions to driving the Lexus. Her admissions to being angry at Dawn that night. And I dare say her admissions that she told I'd like to play for you clip 1. You're going to hear the first of the statements that she made after she was charged.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
That video is definitely taken out of context, but she was asking, could I have done it? That is not an admission at all, but it is a little persuasive.
Ladies and gentlemen, I simply ask you to follow the evidence, follow the science, follow the data. Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead
Turtle Boy would have coughed there.
you to the truth. That on January 29th, 2022, a very intoxicated defendant was angry and arguing about the relationship with John O'Keefe. And after the fight was over, she left, but she brought the fight back to him in the form of her SUV. She clipped him, he fell backwards, he broke his head, and then this man who helped, a lifetime of help, was
Total different theory this time than the first trial.
left at the corner of that yard, left to die with no help. The facts, the data, and the evidence will bring you the truth, and the defendant's own words will confirm everything you've already concluded.
Much different than the first opening that we saw in trial number 1, mainly because it's a different prosecutor with a different set of skills. Clearly, he's a level above the old prosecutor from the original trial. The defense's response will be in the next video.